Welcome back to an episode of the Jesus Cartel where Clay has declined to even hear what we're talking about 10 seconds before we go on air. Which is kind of our normal routine. This is going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, usually we get everything set up, and while we're getting everything set up, Andrew will tell me a little bit about what we're talking about, or at least the get to know you segment or whatever, and this time he was fixing to tell me, and I told him I did not want to know. So this is like my way of playing Russian roulette.
Yeah. There's another way to play I could teach you.
Well, it is what it is. Because here's what people don't understand about this. Not only do I not know anything that's going to be asked of me for the next hour, the other side of it is, and if you know Andrew, you know this side, he could say, okay, I'll play your game, and now he could switch to a question.
Yeah.
Earlier, I would know the question, and he could switch it. Now he can ask anything.
That's true.
So, yeah.
That's true. Yeah. This could be a lot of fun.
But I'm quite confident he's going to go with what the Holy Spirit told him ahead of time to do.
Well, the Holy Spirit likes to play jokes too. If we're made in the image of God, certainly God has humor. And so I don't know that the Lord doesn't want me to just left turn this puppy hard.
There you go.
So we'll see. What's been going on with you, man? It's been a whole lot of stuff happened in the last few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of seasonal changes. School's starting back. You got a kid in school. You got a whole lot of different things happening at this particular time of year. Mm-hmm. You've told me about a little bit of it, but what's your impression of the last week?
Well, this is my favorite season of the year. Football season. Yeah, it's my favorite season of the year, so I love it. And so getting ready to enjoy that, I really thought Saturday during the daytime was going to get it to enjoy a lot of football, but my brothers that are in the deer lease with me decided we're having a work day Saturday, so I'm going to hit part of that. But, it's not a big deal because later Saturday I'm leaving to go to Vegas. Never been to Vegas before.
I did not know that.
Yep, never been. Out of all the places in the world that I've been to a lot of places that say they're similar to Vegas, but I've never been to Las Vegas before. No, never been to Nevada at all. And so I'm excited to go. I'm going to carry all the money that I got with me, probably like $40, And no, LSU's playing the opener against USC in Las Vegas in a brand new stadium there in the Allegiant Stadium. So I'm excited about that. And really, to be honest with you, just need to get away, need to get away, need to clear my head, need to, fill my head with some other stuff other than what it has been, and going to look at it. So we have myself, my wife, my buddy Jeff Boughton, his wife Jennifer Boughton, and Gretchen Clark are going with us. So,
nice.
So us
what a
five are going. Yeah. So while we go to the LSU game, the ladies are going to the Blue Man group. So that's something that's really more my speed. But it happens to be in the hotel that we're staying in, so they won't have to venture out of the hotel. So they're going to go see the Blue Man group because it's not real expensive. And it's in our hotel. So it'd be something they can do while Jeff and I are gone.
The Blue Man Group has been around for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen pictures of them. I have no idea what they do.
Yeah.
What do you know? I mean, is that something you've been to before?
No.
Do you have any idea, like, kind of what their
I think it
gimmick
involves painted men and drums. Yeah.
Sounds like something be
so
your
I think
speed.
I would really enjoy
that's
it.
That's your speed for sure.
Yeah, I would really enjoy it. And so I hate I can't be there. Maybe my wife will take some pictures with the naked blue men and playing drums and send them to me or something.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then we're going to I shouldn't say this because I don't know how to say it. So the big shows that they have in Vegas, they call like Cirque du Soleil or whatever. Yeah, I can't say it.
Cirque du Soleil.
Okay, Circus du Soleil.
No. It's okay.
But anyhow.
Hold on. For anyone listening let's proceed this program as if Clay pronounced that correctly, because I don't know that anyone's going to be able to move forward.
What's funny is, out of all the people that are in this room right now, I'm probably the only one that has actually been to one of those shows before. But it was in New Orleans. And so they have one now called One. And they do all the, all the acts and, the flying around the room and, all that kind of stuff. But they do it to Michael Jackson music. Mm-hmm. So we're going to that Monday night, and I'm excited about that because I like Michael Jackson music. They wanted to go to one of those Circus de Lay shows. And so, hey, what better way than at least I get to hear some good music.
Yeah. Man, Vegas, that is going to be an interesting weekend. There's going to be a lot of people from Louisiana and Vegas all at once.
Yeah.
I know Vegas is plenty capable of handling different types of people. But Louisiana people are unique by nature, as most of the time when LSU travels, they do drink whatever stadium they went to dry. Mm-hmm. That's not a analogy or a metaphor. That they legitimately drink the stadium dry, usually before halftime.
Right.
And so it will be a hair different, just different crowds there. I've heard of a lot of people who are going to that game.
Yeah, too.
There are a lot of people that I just can't picture in Vegas. Man, it's what an interesting time. I don't know if you know Mr. Rocky Williams.
Yes, I do.
If you know Mr. Rocky, he's going to that game. Mm-hmm. So if you run into him, look out for him. I can't even imagine.
Well, that's not, it's not really our speed. It's not really our deal. But, when we've been to New York, we've really enjoyed it and stuff for short periods of time. We are staying a little longer just because of the flight situation and everything, the way it all went down. So, we have no sponsors yet. That could
we
be a
have
sponsor.
sponsors.
Well, I mean, these we even have to pay for these white cups that I use all the time.
That's true.
But anyhow, so Tuesday we're doing this Grand Canyon Hoover Dam tour. But my good friend Miss Lily figured it out. She's in Vegas all the time, and she figured out how to do a VIP version of that, where you have a better air conditioner bus and that kind of stuff. But it's a comedy tour, to where you have a comedian come on and he's your tour guide.
Interesting.
Yeah, because comedians don't always tell the truth.
Correct.
So how am I going to know if we're really at Hoover Dam or not, or if we're at Oscar's Dam? You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm not, he's going to tell these stories, and am I supposed to believe him?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Can you imagine being a comedian at the point in your career that you're now doing Grand Canyon Hoover Dam tours?
Hey, I think it's like a next level.
That's tough. That's tough business. So, there's going to be a lot of Christian people in Sin City all at once. That's an unusual combination of things, I suppose. But nonetheless, that should be interesting. Your fantasy football draft recently happened also.
My goodness.
How'd your team turn out?
Man, I got the best team that I've ever drafted, and I usually draft really well. Yeah. I enjoy that group of guys that I play fantasy football with. Man, I enjoy them. We have a live draft, which is really uncommon because of the new age, online and everything. But, man, we had 12 guys come together, got to grill, play some cornhole a little bit. Of course,
I found it.
Oh, you found it.
I know you're concerned. I dropped one of my
I went
cranberries.
undefeated in the cornhole, and then we got to draft, and I really feel like that I did so much better than everybody else. And so really enjoyed my draft night.
I'm going to ask you one more question about it, and we'll move on. Cause some of our viewers are really enjoying this, but I know some of them don't care about football, and that's okay. Yeah. Could you tell me who's going to finish last? I just want to know in your opinion.
Yeah, I haven't even looked at his team, but it's going to be Big Baby. Big Baby finishes last every single year.
What about, okay, so you know what a sleeper pick is, like somebody that nobody's really going to pick, but then they end up doing really well. Who would you say, as far as teams in your league are concerned, who would you say is like the reverse sleeper? Who thinks they're going to do well, but you think that they're going to end up just bombing?
Well, I don't know. Now, let me answer this question first. Cooper picks the best sleepers by far.
Sure.
Him and then Thomas Flint, probably, because Thomas plays dynasty leagues. But Cooper picks the best sleepers, so Cooper's team is always terrible until late in the year. And then late in the year, he's got the best team. The problem is he didn't make the playoffs because he picked all sleepers, you know. Brandon Casey hosts this league, and he used to be good at fantasy football.
Oh, man.
And he has gotten terrible.
Fell off.
And he has, since we started this league, he's been terrible. Now, he always thinks he's going to be great, so I think he's probably, you know, the one that thinks
sleeper.
He's going to be the best but won't. Oh, and I forgot about this. Joe Campbell plays in this league with us. Now, Joe probably only knows 25% of the players, but every time somebody is drafted, Joe has an opinion on them. Now, it's probably really not even a real opinion. He just likes to say stuff, you know. You go pick somebody, he's like, well, that would have been a good pick 3 rounds from now. Or, you know, they say he's going to be good, but, you know, they say a lot to you too. You know what I mean? He's just going to say something every single time. And he probably doesn't even know the players. So Joe probably always thinks he's going to do way better than he really does.
That makes sense. I could see that.
He's like that in golf too. So, you know, it is.
I can see it. Well, yeah. Well, that's cool, man.
How about you, Andrew? How are things going with you?
Man, things are going great. We had our specialist visit with Aria. That went as well as those things can go. We didn't get any bad news. Also didn't really get any answers, but we didn't really expect any answers. I tried to explain to people, you know, we prayed for Aria before anything ever happened. 2, we prayed for Aria more after something happened. And so going to the doctor and them not being able to identify a problem, I don't see as a problem.
Yeah.
I see as the most likely scenario is there's been a divine intervention. All of her number, everything that they've looked at so far, they're like, this is as normal gets. Could it just be she's got some weird outlier condition? Sure, could be. But in my opinion, I'd say it's more likely that something has shifted since then. That's just been my experience. My experience has been on the side of the Lord healing things and fixing things. That's and so, you know, until proven otherwise, that's just what I believe happened.
So Thursday, you and I talked, and we had talked about y'all been taking her numbers and all that, and how they look real good and no issues and everything. And it, you know, Miss Becky and I continued to pray for her, but I wasn't blowing your phone up Friday expecting results, because we didn't really expect any results, you know. Felt like, hey, this was going to be a good initial appointment with a specialist, and then kind of go from there. And it kind of sounds like that's what happened.
Yeah, they basically said that whatever is wrong with her that doesn't seem severe to them, they're not really concerned with it. They're like, just make sure she eats every couple hours some kind of carb, and she should be fine.
And you're like, I understand that, and I agree with that, and I agree with healing, and I think my baby girl is going to be perfect forever, but I'm also sorry I have a seizure.
Yeah.
You know, and that's difficult.
Yeah, watch her go head first into the kitchen tile.
Right.
So, you know, something happened.
Yeah.
But
that's not normal.
But I really do trust the Lord.
Amen.
That's a hard thing for a lot of people. I actually spoke about that at Crockett Point. I think this was last Sunday. I spoke on that for a little bit. You know, there's too many times where we give things to God, but we don't give them to God. We say, Lord, I'm going to give this to you, but then we like check on it constantly. And it's like, it's still very much a worry in our mind. Man, I have to trust the Lord with my kids' health. I will drive myself crazy if I try to control every factor, I'd probably just realistically try to control too much already. That's just my nature. I'm a protector by nature. I want to control every person that comes in. What do they have in their pockets? What's in their bags? Like, that's just how my mind works. Can you imagine how easy it would be for a person like that to go absolutely insane?
Yeah.
So control what you can control, release what you can't, and stop worrying about it, you know?
Yeah, so as Christians, you know, we see things totally different than regular people do. And if I was a regular person, I probably wouldn't be in my right mind because of those issues. You know, worry is something, you know, the Bible says that you cannot add another day by worrying, you know, so what good does it do? Now, so just giving you a little insight into me, because a lot of people have issues, like you said, with health problems and different things like that. They have a problem giving it to God and releasing it. You know, they want to keep, like you said, checking on it or whatever. So that's not an issue for me. If it has to do with us and God, there is no issue. I trust in God. I love Him. He loves me. He loves our family. He wants what's best for our family. I have no problem giving Him those things. You know, been in similar situations we talked about a couple weeks ago with our children, you know, different things like that. Most people don't even know those stories because we don't go share them because it's really did them. I mean, it's no good. You know, we give them to God. God knows. So I have no issue with that. Where I have a problem is, you know, because you said, I trust in God for the health for Arya. I have no issue with that. Where I have a problem is when it involves other people.
Explain.
All right, so I trust God to heal Arya. I don't trust God as much for somebody else to do the right thing. Because then another man's involved.
Sure.
And I believe in free will way more than most people do. And I believe that man can block God's plan for a period of time.
Yeah. So I want to clarify something that you just said that may confuse people when you said that man can block God's plan. What Clay's not saying, and correct me at any point if I misread this, what Clay's not saying is man has so much power that we have the ability to stop something that God has set forth into motion. What Clay's saying is God, by his own free choice, has given man free will. And for that reason, even though God would prefer a different outcome, does not force that outcome on his people above their freedom of choice. Is that?
Yeah, so to explain a little further, God's will isn't always done.
Sure.
His perfect will isn't always done.
Yeah.
Now, you know, so that's where some of the problems arise. You know, so people say, well, if it's God's will, it's going to happen. No, not necessarily.
Yeah.
You know, it might be God's will for you to get this job, but if the guy that decides who gets the job went and got drunk the night before and had a hangover, and he meets you and you're real cheerful and you got the Spirit of the Lord, he may not be hearing the Spirit of the Lord right then, and may want somebody that's a little more depressed like him and everything than he was. So you might not get that job, and God, you know, did intend for you to have that job because that guy's not going to be there much longer anyhow, you know, or whatever reason. And so I have no issue with releasing Arya to God and trusting Him 100%.
Yeah.
But in this world, we deal with people all the time that aren't following God's will.
Sure.
And we can't expect somebody that's not following God's will to do what God wants them to do. We're not robots.
Yep.
You know.
Yep. And that statement, and I'm just be honest with you, because I would have been the same way some years ago. That statement would have been a big kick in the pants for me to hear, and it probably would have frustrated me that you said it. But you have to look at the reality of the way that the Lord set things into motion. It's very clear throughout the entirety of the Old Testament when God would give specific instruction. He's telling you what He'd like done. and then they did not do that thing. And so, he made clear what his will was for the Israelite people, and then they did whatever they wanted to do in most cases. And so we're not saying that at the end of it all, that this is not going to turn out the way that God intended. It most certainly will. He has, think large scale. Large scale, everything that God wills to happen will happen. But as far as the individual small decisions that are happening in the in-between, he has given man free will to operate within his large-scale will. Mm-hmm. Now, there is an area that we're not going to be able to walk outside of. Your free will does have limitations within itself, but it's not because he's keeping you from doing those things. It's because when God creates something, you're not going to be able to overpower his will. And so, it's not like I can't become God.
Right.
That would be escaping,
That's right.
And so there are things like that that's like.
But even like Jesus says, not my will that any shall perish, but we know that they will.
He says it verbatim.
Yeah,
literally, of the whole will thing, he says,
right.
I mean,
and so, we know that it isn't always done. And the reason why this is important is because when bad things happen to good people want to blame it on God.
Yeah. It's like, well, I guess this was his will.
Right, and that's not true, In Genesis chapter 1, he gave dominion over to man. That's the whole reason why Jesus had to be a man to win it back, But we still have free will, even in the new covenant. And so we have Christians out there that are operating in God's perfect will, and then we have Christians out there that aren't operating in God's perfect will, and they may be operating in God's will in this part of their life, but not in all part of their life. And then we live in a fallen world full of people, that don't even know who God is at all. So when it's me and God,
it's easy.
It's easy.
Yeah.
When other people are involved,
Yeah.
it gets messy.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about we see a lot of people call it now church hurt. We see a lot of church hurt. These are Christian people going to church with other Christian people, but yet they get hurt in a way. They get offended in a way. Things happen. Oh, why? Because some people aren't following God 100%. They say they love him and they're following him in parts of their life, but not always in his perfect will and stuff. So even people in the church get hurt and cause problems. People are messy. We live in a messy world. It's difficult. Some people are focused more on self than they are on, on God's perfect will. And but I just wanted people to know that, because we shouldn't ever have an issue between us and God. At all. There should be no strife, no issue, no nothing. God has your best interest at heart, and he loves you, and he's your healer, and he's your protector, and he's your savior, he's your everything.
Sure.
And where we have problems is living in a fallen world and dealing with people.
Sure. I want to, say...
That's pretty deep real quick.
Yeah,
Sorry about that.
Way to go. You ruined the whole podcast. No, so
Aria's doing great.
so one of the things about what you're saying in terms of like when people get involved, things can get complicated, is basically what you're getting
Right.
at. That's why it's so important for self-assessment, which we talk about a lot. It's why it's so important, because as I stand currently, am pretty unselfish. Anybody that knows me, anybody that's around me would all agree with that statement, that if it comes down to it, Andrew's going to do what's better for the whole before he does what's best for himself. That's just how he is. Now, as Andrew, as main character of that scenario, man, that's a great thing, and it feels good that people think that about me. And it would be really easy for me to just download that as, this is who I am, this is how I am, this is how I'm always going to be, and never check on how I'm behaving again. And then 10, 20 years from now, the way that I behave has changed, but I still see myself as behaving exactly the way that I used to. And so that's why it's so important to have people around you who love you and care about you, so that when you do start shifting, they'll say something to you. And just to be able to have those conversations and stuff like that, because that is something that, like, I try to be super careful of, because sometimes people say stuff to me, and it's I don't want to say accusatory, because I don't think they intend it to be, but they're just like, hey, look, man, you did this. Ryan actually shared a moment like that with you and I from a while back, where he was like, I just didn't understand what you were doing. It didn't seem right to me. And so when I received that information, my first knee jerk was, you should know that's not me. You should know that's not how I am. But instead, I took a step back and I looked at the situation and how it would have unraveled in front of him. Not through my lens, because it all made sense how I saw it. How did he see it? And then when I looked at it from his side, I was like, well, given the information that you were privileged to, I could see how this would bother you. It wasn't that I did anything wrong, but through the way that he would have seen the story, in the order that he would have received the information, it absolutely seemed wrong. Even though there was no negative intention behind it, it doesn't matter. I had to take an honest assessment of the situation. And so I had an opportunity to be mad, hurt, or offended. He had an opportunity to be mad, hurt, and offended. And both of us took a breath, looked through the lens of the other one, and were able to reconcile it in practically no time. What was a really big situation. Right. And it was almost immediately reconciled, because both of us thought better of the other person to assume that we would do each other wrong. And it's like, assess yourself. You're gonna go through seasons and changes and stuff like that, and those kinds of changes, in my experience, they happen without you noticing. Laziness is a big one like that. You can go from a really disciplined person to developing some small lazy habits without ever noticing that they're happening. And so how much easier would it be for something that's not so obvious as laziness, like selfishness, which creeps in very, very slowly and very, very subtly, because it's just a mindset change. It's not necessarily an action change. So on the outside, I'm still giving money to this charity, but on the inside, my why has changed. So before it was about the charity. Now it's about how I'm perceived by other people. Action looks the same. Right. Why has changed. And so, man, it's,
When you talked about it, that's the reason why it's important to surround yourself with people, because, you're known for one area, but you may change. And something that come to my mind, just got through reading a book that you've read before, Jesus on Leadership. I think the author is Jeannie Wilkes, I think, is the author. Great book. If you get a chance, go pick it up. Jesus on Leadership, I think it's the name of it. But I think you read it several years ago in Bible college, and I just recently read it. But, this guy is a pastor of a church, senior pastor of a church, and he is leaving to go on a conference, to go be the speaker at a conference. And his deacons or leadership committee comes to him and says, hey, look, we just want you to know, we feel like you have not been leading our church the right way. You haven't been the leader that you used to be. You hadn't been the leader that we're looking for, and we're going to give you 2 weeks to decide if you're going to continue to lead our church or not. But if you don't have a revelation that you're doing this wrong and you need to do it better, then you're not going to be our leader anymore. Well, guess where he was headed? He was headed to a leadership conference to teach on leadership. He was one of the speakers to teach on leadership, and he was known as a leadership teacher. Yeah. And over those 2 weeks, he had to look at it and reconcile with himself, and he realized that he was spending his time focused on leading others, but was not doing a good job leading his church. Now, what would have happened if he would have just said, hey, I'm the boss here, I'm the leader here, I'm going to do what I want to do, then the way their church was set up, they would have voted him out, and he wouldn't have been the leader there anymore. Yeah. Well, guess what? Not only did he reconcile it and understand it and everything, but he was able to continue to be the pastor there, serve those people that had given him this information that he could have got offended from. He ended up washing their feet and stuff in a meeting and everything, and he didn't submit to them. He submitted to God, and God showed him exactly what to do. And now, you know, his book on servant leadership is one of the most famous books out there on leadership. You know, and so we all have to watch for those blind spots in our lives, and that's the reason why it's good to surround yourself with people that are pro Andrew.
Sure.
But there's also good to surround yourself with some people that aren't your biggest fan club. You know, they like you, they love you, but they're also good at being able to tell you the truth about things. You know, so all those, hey, it's good. You just have to make sure that you surround yourself with good people that have God's best interest at heart.
Yep, and that is where the episode turns.
There we go.
So I have been leading for a long time, as you have, but I'm going to speak mostly from my own experience, just because the topic kind of come up organically. This is an episode in some subject matter that I've wanted to talk about for a long time.
Okay.
And we've just had other topics and other questions that people find interesting, and I want to talk about it kind of from my perspective as a leader, and really lean in mostly to, you know, my experience and kind of how some of those things played out, just because you have to learn from when you stumble. You know, and first I want to just say, with what you were just addressing, man, how important was the humility of that leader. That was the paramount factor that allowed that to go from what was a very negative situation to a very positive one, was an unbelievable amount of humility and ownership. And you talked about surrounding yourself with the right people, and too often in life, not just as a leader, but as a believer or as a Christian, especially as a political person, we tend to surround ourselves with yes men. We surround ourselves with people who are more than likely going to agree with whatever ideas we put out. And that is so very dangerous for a lot of reasons. One, you basically have a one-sided approach to everything. You don't have any real, like, if you have a brainstorming session with your team that's just surrounded by yes men, here's what gets talked about: your one idea. And everybody goes, oh yeah, Andrew, man, that was phenomenal. I've been a part of that. I've led those teams. I've led those teams where I surrounded myself with people who thought I was God's gift to everything and just agreed with whatever I said. And very rarely were we successful. I would say maybe 20-30% of the time did we actually have really good results. I mean, we accomplished some things, but I wouldn't say that we were ever impressed with the result of very much that we did. Why? Because we had a one-sided approach. I didn't have a room of free thinkers that could see things from different angles, were willing to challenge my ideas. Because I don't know if it was too high of a level of respect for me. I don't know if they were afraid of what would happen, if they'd be removed from the team if they challenged those ideas, or what. But I can tell you that it was among the worst. It was among the worst team that I've ever been a part of. It was very much a problem. And so, have you seen in your life ever a surrounding of yes men and some of the dangers that can create? Yeah,
for sure. We see it a lot of times, and a lot of leaders are, insecure, and they want to surround themselves with people like that. And then sometimes it just happens. I think some of the best ideas are when you have a visionary or a person with a vision. It doesn't, it doesn't have to be the same person all the time. You have a person with a vision, and they put an idea out there, and then you have another person that's kind of already been thinking in that area a little bit, coincidentally, and so they kind of give a little different spin on it. And then you have more of a manager type that's like, all right, I understand what y'all are saying, but in order to implement this, then this is the way it's going to have to go. Mm-hmm. And then they all get together and they come up with a really, really good idea.
Yeah.
And I think that having different people with different ways of looking at things is really how you come up with really good ideas.
Yep.
I think the person that has the vision most of the time is not the person that's supposed to implement it and put it in. But if the person that is the one that's supposed to implement it, if he didn't get any input on the vision itself, then there's going to be issues there too. So I think that's where we see a lot of the issues. You know, just like Fresh Start, a lot of the people that started Fresh Start were not the people that were supposed to run Fresh Start for the long term. You know, and I see that in almost every ministry. You know, you would think that, hey, I founded the ministry, I started the ministry, I'm the one that's supposed to, but most of the time that's not the case. Most of the time the ones that, you know, they're still supposed to be a part in some way, but not part of the everyday everything. And so because you have people with the vision, and then you have people that are more, like I said, the more the manager type. So I think it requires all of those people working together, knowing their strengths, knowing their weaknesses, and working as a team. I think that's where you get the best plan and the best implementation and the best results.
Yeah.
You know, so I think in a lot of, you know, I would challenge that when you were leading that team, I would challenge that a lot more than 20% of your ideas were successful, because I just know you, and you have really good ideas and stuff. But at the same time, if you don't have other people that are helping, you know, work them out practically, then I can see how it could happen.
Yeah. I think it was Lincoln who famously appointed the person he beat in the presidential election to the head of his cabinet.
Okay.
Which was, you know, what a controversial ideal. It'd be like if Trump would have appointed Hillary, you know, as VP immediately after. You know, that's a strange concept for a lot of people today. But what he understood is he needed to be able to see from the other side of the aisle. And I have discussed Jesus with a lot of people in my life, a lot of very educated people. I've never had more fruitful discussions about Jesus than when I had them with atheists and agnostic people. I always learned the most and learned how to articulate Jesus the best having conversations with them. Because it's a directly opposed ideal. They don't have the same view of the world that I have. And so it really challenged me in a lot of ways to be able to have these conversations, not to somebody who sees things the way that I do, to someone who sees them altogether different. And so, yeah, yes men can be a very dangerous thing. And then you get inside a sounding board that tells you that you're right all the time, and then you kind of get callous to other ideas. It's not just that you're not hearing them; it's that those people become your enemy. You start to hate them. You grow a disdain for them. And man, that's what we've seen in the, I don't want to get into politics too much, but that's what we've seen in the political world, is now you're either this or you're that. And if you're this or that, you have to hate the other.
Yeah,
and
it's difficult.
It's not ideal.
Well, talk about, you know, just a practical way of putting those things together. So, you know, as far as church goes and stuff, I'm usually more of the administrator, managerial type deal, you know. So somebody's got a vision, I'll hear the vision, and then I figure out the best way to put it into action, right? And so if we did just their vision, it probably wouldn't work, because we have to put it in a way that will work, okay? Sure. So you had to have the vision, you know, without vision, people perish. So you have the vision, and then you have somebody like me that just knows the practical ways of the nuts and bolts of putting it together, and do it. Well, so at Fresh Start, you know, I'm more of, you know, the leader there, and so I'll come up with a vision of something and how to put it together, because that's my other side. But usually when I meet with my team, it doesn't change on the managerial side. It first changes on the vision side.
Yeah.
Because usually I put it out there and somebody has a version of that really works better. And then we go with the nuts and bolts side.
Yeah.
And so I've been able to be a part of both sides, and I love them all. To me, it doesn't matter how you arrive at the solution as long as you arrive at the solution.
Sure.
I think so many people are focused on being right instead of doing the right thing.
That's right.
And that's something we've talked about
It's a
before.
pride thing. It
Yeah,
really
it's
is.
something that we've talked about before. To me, it doesn't matter how we get there as long as we get there. But what I'm not good at is, a lot of people, they like to start stuff and they like to finish stuff. We've talked on here before, I'm more of a process guy. Now I do like when we can jump the process, like we talked about last week. My guys reminded me of that a lot of times we can jump the process because of belief.
Yes, sir.
And we've been talking about that this week in group. After me and you talked about that meant a lot to the Fresh Start guys, especially the First Phase guys. They enjoyed hearing us talk on that, and they reminded me of that this week. They're like, man, I enjoy it, and I didn't even remember, and they reminded me of it. But I am more of a process guy, and so I don't like starting things that we can't continue. So to me, the plan is of how we're going to get there is worth more than the idea. So I hate to start something and it fail. So I like, how we're going to get there, how we're going to keep it going, how we're going to keep moving forward. Because I never want to start something and not be able to finish something, or it not keep going. I think Miles Monroe said that if I died today and everything that we had done died with me, then I would feel like a failure. And then he died the next day.
Yeah.
And so we always want to keep making plans for things to keep moving forward. But to me, that's impossible to do by yourself. And it's even more impossible to do with yes men. Because here's the danger of the yes men. If you're doing it by yourself, then you're doing it by yourself. And you critique yourself, you self-analyze, you make sure your motives are right, you do all these kind of checks and balances within yourself, self-talk, so to speak. But when you got a team, then you're relying on them to catch anything that you didn't catch. So most of the time, you don't spend a lot of time analyzing everything. You just throw it out there and expect them to help you look at your blind spots, pick it up, and those kind of things. But if all they are is yes men, then all of a sudden, not only do you have your confidence, but you got the confidence of these 5 other people, and now you feel really strong about where you are. And the truth of the matter is, nobody really analyzed the situation.
Yep.
Now, that's difficult.
So, you've mentioned this a few times on the podcast over however long we've been doing it, over a year, that you and I operate differently in that you look at a situation typically and you figure out how to take it from where it's at and make it successful. I operate backwards from those. I look at a situation and I immediately try to figure out how it can fail, and I try to fail-proof it. So I don't start out by seeing how can I make this maximally successful. I look at it and say, how can I make sure that this never stops? How do I make sure that this never fails? And I solidify those areas first. That's just what's important to me. I'm the opposite of a yes man. Like, it's hard to get me to the yes point, because when you bring me an idea, the first things that come to my mind is what can ruin it, what can stop it, and I don't see potential right off, and say, hey, what if we did this, even with some of the changes we've done at Fresh Start lately. When we first started talking about them, I'm like, well, here's how this can go wrong. Here's what this is going to cost us. We're going to have to get this many more people. This can get us in jail. There was just so many things that could not go right. And so once we bound up all of those, well then, I don't know how everybody else felt at that point. But once we had crossed off all of my check marks, at that point, I'm like,
you're good to go.
Success is the only thing left now.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it can't fail now. And so,
and I don't know if there's anybody else in the world that's as good at that as you are. And here's why. And here's why. Because almost every time I ask you something, the first words that come out of your mouth could be seen as negative.
Mm-hmm.
But yet you're one of the most positive people that there is.
Sure.
You know, and we're not talking about regular life. We're just talking about, you know, in business and things like that. Because if I ask Andrew this, what usually comes out of his mouth is over here. Mm-hmm. And it's on the backside, mm-hmm. you know. And you're like, man, okay, I just had an idea. You just kind of ruined my idea. But he didn't ruin the idea at all. He just went to, well, what's the worst thing that could happen here? Mm-hmm. But then he works his way this way,
yeah.
and he's positive the whole entire time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, you know, thinking we're not even going to do this deal because he saw this over here. Next thing I know, he's done come up with a whole process. He's more on board with it than I am. And I'm like, all right, so we are doing it. He's like, yeah, we're doing it. And I'm like, okay, thought we wasn't doing it anymore. You know, and so it's a really cool, you know, way of looking at things.
Yeah.
You know, and I look at it similar in the sense that, you know, I am a nuts and bolts guy. I do like to find all the negative sides of things and fix those things. You know, Terry Poland, when we brought him on, we asked him what was, you know, one of the number one things he likes about me, and he said is that how considerate I am. Mm-hmm. Okay, so on the surface, we look at that, and I consider everybody's feelings, everybody's ideas, everybody's mindset. What's everybody going to think about this? I do consider that, but I also consider all of the nuts and bolts and stuff. You know, if we do this, what's going to happen? You know, the cause and effect. I guess you could see. So I do consider all those kind of things, and so we both get there. You just start at the back end. Mm-hmm. And I started at the front end.
Yep.
But like you said, once you figure out all that back stuff, then you're able to be more positive than most people because now you're confident in where we are. But if all you did was say, yeah, Clay, that's a great idea, man. Nobody could come up with an idea like that except you. I'm glad you come up with that, man. We can do that. You ain't done me any good.
Yeah.
All you've done is give me a false sense of security. And now I really don't know if it's going to work or not. Whereas, like with the changes that you were talking about at Fresh Start, I was like, okay, so Andrew knows the most about this of anybody in the room, which is probably still only 10% of what we really need to know.
Yep.
But now he's done the research, he's looked at all this, and he's quite confident in this area. Well, that boosts my confidence because of the work that I know that you've done.
Sure.
But there's other people that were in the same room that were like, well, I don't know anything about it, but that sounds like a great idea to me. Mm-hmm. Well, that doesn't help.
Sure.
You know?
I think I look at it like a race kind of in a way. So let's say, you know, I had an opponent and we're going to have a race and nobody tells me how long the race is. All we know is we're racing. This could be a 100-yard dash. This could be a 100-mile race. I have no idea. And so the gun goes off, and we both just start booking it, just right out the gate, man. And this guy's faster than I am. And it becomes very obvious that this guy's faster than I am. Well, if he gets too far away from me too quick, there's a good chance that I drop out of this race. Even if it could be 100 miles. I could be very much in this race, but I'll drop out because of how much ground I've already lost really fast. And so that's kind of why I work backwards, because I've seen a lot of times people try to sprint towards a goal real quick, and then it looked like the goal is getting away from them, and then they just quit on it. And so for me, it's like I start with the pace that this is going to be a long fight. And for, you know, as far as having to deal with problems goes, the longer the fight is, the more likely it is I'm going to win. Because I have a lot of grit, and not just physically but mentally. I've got a lot of grit. I got a whole lot of stick to it, and so that's my strength. And so I just lean in really heavy there. And it's like I'm gonna pace myself out the gate on this. I'm gonna figure out how to make sure that I succeed, make sure that I've got all the stuff that I need to make it work, and I'm just going to grind this thing out until it gets done. And so, you know, it's just that can be the problem with the other side of it, is if you feel like you lose a lot of ground early on, you might decide that it's not worth trying.
Yeah, to me, you know, it's a lot of building the foundation today so that you can have sustained success in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something we've talked about a little bit before. Most of y'all know that Andrew and I run a 7-month faith-based alcohol and drug rehab where people stay with us a minimum of 7 months in order to graduate the program. And so teaching them how to build a foundation that's sustainable forever is a big deal, and that's what we do each and every day. Well, it's the same way in whatever you're doing, whatever your goals are and stuff. If you try to, go too quick, too fast, then you might have some success, but it's going to be superficial. So when adversity happens and difficult happens, then you hadn't really considered all that. Now you had to stop and punt and figure it out. Whereas if you build that strong foundation ahead of time, you've considered all those things. So when those issues come, hey, we already know how we're going to handle this. We already know what's going on.
Yep. And a lot of this, if you kind of boil it all down, a lot of this is just, it kind of comes from a place of learning how to communicate, learning how to talk to people. You talked about how, the beginning of a conversation with me, if you present a large idea, I could sound really negative if you don't, kind of stick with me through, I'm working myself through it. And so there's a few different things that you got to understand when communicating with people. And this is going to be across the board a really strong thing for people to remember and understand, because this will apply to you no matter what kind of difficult conversation that you're having. I've read a lot of books on it. I've experienced a lot of things. And the first thing is knowing whether or not you need to have the conversation at all. There are some times you need to have heavy, difficult conversations. There are some times you need to give people a little bit of space to grow. The way that you determine whether or not it's time for that is you figure out what it's going to cost them if they're wrong. And so, you'll determine whether or not you can sleep at night knowing that you allowed them to give up whatever they're going to give up. But if all it is time and effort, that's, this isn't going to financially crush them, it's not going to destroy any imperative relationships. A lot of times, man, people come to me with those ideas and say, hey, man, what do you think about that? I'm like, man, if that's what you feel like you're supposed to do, rock with it, man. And, in the back of my mind, I've thought, within the 10 seconds they told me, I'd have thought of 8 things that could just make this thing fall flat on its face. But experience in chasing after things is not a bad thing. And hey, what if they do it? What if they do it? This isn't going to cost them anything. Is this really something that I want to shut down if it could potentially be a great leg up for them? Like, hey, man, maybe this is something that's going to develop some character in them and some endurance and some perseverance and some different things. And so that's the first thing, is figure out whether or not you really need to have the conversation, or is this an opportunity for them to grow that you need to let them have. Secondly, go ahead.
I want to make a comment on that. So, because I just experienced it this morning.
Yeah.
And it's a reason to have good people. So I was talking to one of my best friends, family situation, and he's like, and I told a family member, if you're going to go out and do this, and this is what you're going to do, when it blows up and stuff, hey, look, you're on your own in this, in this area,
Mm-hmm.
And so he's explaining to me, this conversation he had with a family member, and I agree with what he said, and I agree with the situation. The issue is, I did look at how bad it really could be on a different side of things than he did. And so he's looking at it just this one area. If it goes bad, I'm looking at a whole nother area. And so how bad it could get here and how bad it could get here was two totally different things. And he had not considered this area. Yeah. So not only did he have to have that conversation, but he actually had to go around and fix something on this backside to prevent something from really bad happening.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we've been talking about, And so on the front side, he's like, well, if you do this and this happens, that's on you. And I'm like, yeah, but that's one problem. This over here could really be harmful. So now we got to fix this side over here. So on here, it was a conversation. On here, we had to actually take care of something.
Yeah. Yep. So that would be the first point. The second point would be, and we talked about this before, I'm not going to get into this part so much, but establish your motive in the conversation. Let them know why you're telling them the difficult thing that you're telling them. Don't let them try to figure it out. Don't make them try to figure it out. You should bring them, hey, look, man, I'm telling you this because I care about you. I'm worried that if this doesn't work out, this could cost you your marriage. Like, let them know exactly why you're saying what you're saying. Don't just shoot down their idea for
and don't lie to them about your motive.
Yeah.
To be real blunt about your motive.
Because that kind of stuff gets snuffed out. Third piece of advice, and I'd like to hear a comment from you on this. Go into it with thick skin. If you're going to have a difficult conversation with somebody, wear thick skin to that conversation, because if you hurt their feelings, they may try to cut you. That's just it's an unfortunate part of it, but a lot of times, man, people ask me my opinion on something, and I'll give them my opinion on something, and then I'm met with an abrupt, well, who are you? And it's like, and then they'll start trying to dig out things from the past and, ways that they perceive things that are going on with me right now, and they'll just start shooting, and it's got nothing to do with me. Right. And so
hurt people.
That's right.
Yeah, and so it's one thing. So you're talking about at the beginning, you're talking about going to somebody with a conversation, and so they probably didn't even solicit your advice.
That's right.
If they felt like you felt already, then you wouldn't have saw the need to go have the conversation with them to begin with. So this is probably not going to be taken well.
Yeah, you're going to catch them off guard.
Right. And so, because and nobody likes to be told that what they're doing is wrong. Now people like to get better, even if they had to, but they don't like the part where they're being told that they're doing wrong.
Yep.
Even me, I've been walking this thing a long time. I love to hear people's ideas and stuff, but it still stings when you're the one that's wrong in the area. Now, I love what comes after that if we handle it right, because now we got growth and we're moving forward and those kind of things. So even some of the best people, it's going to be difficult when you go to them and explain to them that what they're doing is wrong, or your opinion is what they're doing is wrong.
Yep.
You better have some thick skin.
Yep. Next part would be, if given the opportunity, expose your own flaws, current or previous, to kind of free them up to be able to take some constructive criticism.
Yeah.
Don't go into the situation, and you may be doing everything right in life, and that's okay. As a matter of fact, I encourage you to make all right decisions. But when you go into a conversation like that, like, hey, look, man, I've been there. Cite a time that you've been there and did the wrong thing, so that they don't feel like you're coming at them as somebody who's never made any mistakes. And this kind of goes with that last thing, if you'll expose your own flaws, it'll make them less likely to feel like they need to protect themselves. And then to tack on to kind of what you said at the end, present clear evidence, not possibilities. It's like, hey, look, if you do this, this will create this. Here's how I know. Give. Don't just tell them that you feel like.
Right.
If you do this, like, you need to take them something real.
And if you don't have anything real, you probably shouldn't have the conversation to begin with.
That's right.
Yeah. If you get down to all those things, and you don't have anything substantial to begin with, then you need to go back and re-question number one.
That's right.
Do I even need to have this question?
That's right.
Or conversation.
And then to tie all that together at the end of it, have an action plan for them. Don't just go present them a problem. Have some version of an action plan or some sort of steps they can take to get themselves out of whatever situation they're in. But do not try to force them to do that plan. Just present them with an outlet.
Yeah, show them an option.
Yeah, in case they need it. Maybe it will inspire a better idea. But give them something. Don't just tell them how.
Yeah, people need options.
Yeah,
if they feel like there's no way out.
That's right.
Then they feel like they're backed in the corner.
Hey, buddy, I'm here to tell you you're a huge piece of trash because of this. I don't know what you can do about it. Like, not a great conversation. You did not do a good job.
No.
And so, yeah, don't try to force it on them, though. If they're not ready to do it or not ready to make changes, hopefully that plants a seed in them that, later on will take some root.
There's very few times where I haven't offered somebody an action plan when having those kind of conversations. And those that, and some of it's just because I didn't initiate the conversation. They initiated the conversation. I wasn't prepared for it. But in those times that I didn't give them a sustainable action plan, all those conversations ended poorly.
Yeah.
I mean, they just did because, you know, and I'm not saying it was all my fault. It's a lot of times I didn't hear the word from the Lord. I wasn't prepared. Whatever, they threw it on me, whatever reason. But when they're like, well, what do I do now? And I go, I really don't know. You know, and because I'm not going to tell them something wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie to them.
Yeah,
and I'm
that's
not
good
going to give them
advice,
some
too.
cookie cutter deal. But when I've not been able to give them the answer right then, a lot of times it's difficult. You
That's
know,
good.
and sometimes that happens in marriages. You know, when I'm doing marriage counseling and stuff, when, you know, most of the time God's flowing through me all the time, but then they're like, well, I've done this, this, and this, and this, and now what do I do? Well, I'm not going to tell them to get divorced because I'm a man of God, and the Bible doesn't say that I'm supposed to do that. But I'm like, okay, I don't know. You know, we need to pray about this and think about this and work towards that. You know, so anytime you can have at least an action plan that you can throw out there, like you said, not force, but just throw out there, is a good thing.
Yeah.
But also, don't just throw something out there if you don't have it. You know, it's okay to not know everything.
Sure.
It's okay to not always have a plan. You know, I like to have a plan. I'm preaching to myself. But it's also okay just to have to sit back and listen to the Lord some more.
That's right. And, you know, my closing thought on the day is just to understand that in life, there is no such thing as a bad team. But there's very much such thing as a bad leader. And if you have a bad leader, the team has its own potential, right? And so let's say on a scale of 100, you've organized a football team, and their collective average skill is about 70 out of 100, right? You give them a good coach, and their potential goes from 70% to 85. You give that same team a bad coach, and their potential, because you're not going to diminish them, but their potential is only 73, right? So as the leader, what you do is you set the ceiling for how high that team can succeed. And a bad leader, it flatlines. You're never going to be better than whatever you just naturally have. And that's tough to do. It's tough to do. And so, you know, I have been a bad leader with good teammates, and we still had a limited amount of success because there were good enough people on my team that we just got through it, you know, by sheer tyranny of will and skill set. I have been a bad leader on an average team and failed miserably because we didn't have the skills to overcome the obstacles, and I wasn't a good enough leader to raise our ceiling of potential. I've been a good leader on a bad team and had a ton of success. One of the more successful teams I've ever been a part of. Even though the natural skill level of the team was lower, because I was an excellent leader, there was a massive amount of potential I was able to add to the top end of that team. One of the better teams we ever had, because even though I've been a part of some more skilled teams, that team didn't have any ego because they didn't see themselves as standouts. And so they were able to just about max out that potential level because there was no ego involved. It was really, really cool. They were teachable. They listened. It was excellent. And if you're a good leader on a good team, man, things are just, you're not going to run into any problems. And so, you know, just assess that if you are in a leadership position. That's something I got to, because we're all, let me just say it like this, we're all in leadership positions. You're just leading different things, right? And so right now you might just be leading yourself. But
your family, your kids,
you got a circle of friends. You've got some leadership capital somewhere with some people. And I want you to understand that as a leader, everything's your responsibility. Like, you don't get to say, well, this didn't happen because of this guy or that guy. It's like you're in charge of that. You're the leader. Like, you've got to take ownership of it so that it can be changed and affected. But so long as it's someone else's fault, that also means you can't do anything about it. And so, man, take ownership of the things that are difficult. Step up to the plate, knock them out the park, man. You absolutely can.
Amen.
Yep. You got anything else?
Well, we didn't do a traditional get to know you segment, but I think what we learned about me is that I trust in God completely and I trust in man none.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I caught that. Yeah, I did have one, but we don't have
We'll
time.
save it for
yeah,
next
we'll
time.
shove it to next week.
Hey, we love y'all.